Welcome to Lightways Astrology with me, Isabel. I'm a practicing astrologer, and today I have the great pleasure of having with me Oscar Hofman, who is the author of many books, but the one that caught my eye for today is Fixed Stars in the Chart, Constellations, Lunar Mansions, and Mythology. Oscar, welcome to Lightways.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here.
I've been really enjoying your book very, very much. And one of the reasons is there's just so much mythology in it. Quite aside from anything else, I've always liked a good story. So that's been very, very pleasant. But what I thought would be nice is if we could talk a little bit about the fixed stars and the constellations, and maybe you could explain the difference then between what we have come to know as the 12 signs and the constellations related to them.
Yes, that's extremely important indeed. And I think the best way to think of it is that there's a difference between the signs and the constellations, which is very fundamental. And that is that you cannot see the signs and you can see the constellations. Now, we have the sign of Aries, which is exactly 30 degrees. And then we have the constellation of Aries, which is a constellation of visible stars, and which is actually much less than 30 degrees. So there's a very big difference. They have the same names, but they are a different thing. And this sheds light on what the zodiac actually is. It's the absolutely fundamental thing in astrology to which everything refers back. And that's the absolute fundamental blueprint. And you can see this. It's 12 times exactly 30 degrees. So that's a bit of a, could say, almost metaphysical concept. And it's a starting point for everything. Now, all these constellations, they have different lengths, and they are not 30 degrees, and they're much more than 12. So they are, as it were, also because they're visible, they are the first more material manifestation of this 12-fold zodiacal blueprint. So actually the constellation of Aries is the first more material and concrete manifestation of the sign of Aries. I think that's a very big and important difference. You have to realize that which is not visible is more fundamental than that which has materialized. So the zodiac circle, which you can't see, is more fundamental than all these constellations. And actually, these constellations develop out of the zodiac. They are products that come out of the zodiac.
I felt when I was reading that what I was looking at was an evolution of meaning and symbolism, whereby each kind of feeds the other at different points. Would you say that?
Yes, you could say that it's kind of development. And if you think of the old way of giving a picture of the cosmos, this picture of the 7 spheres, and then the 8th sphere and 9th sphere and the 10th sphere, it gives this idea, reflects this idea very clearly, because you have the Earth in the middle. That's the place where we live as human beings. That's the Earth in the middle. Astrology is always necessarily geocentric. And then you have these 10 spheres around it. And the last sphere or the last space behind the 10th sphere is, as it is said, the place where God lives. So from there, from the highest sphere, the creative impulse, which you which is a kind of development, comes down through all these spheres to Earth, and they go through these planet spheres and also through the sphere of the fixed stars, and that is what we see in the chart.
Just then, sorry, I'm listening to you, and there's just so many thoughts all at once, and I'm trying to
yes,
to work out which one is the best one to follow just at the moment.
Yes. The best is probably to start in this divine sphere, from which the highest, from which the creative impulse comes down.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I was going to say, is could you define or describe for the listeners what you mean by these different spheres? Because it could be that they're thinking about spheres as in the actual bodies in the heavens, but we're not. These are theoretical spheres, or abstract in a sense. So would you explain that a little bit more?
Yes, they are, you could say they are theoretical or cosmological concepts in the astrological sense of the word. So it's not that they describe this material or astronomical orbits. What this picture describes is the real structure of the cosmos. So what's behind the material manifestations that are observed in astronomy. So it gives you the structure of creation and the role of the zodiac, the fixed stars, and the planets in it. So if we start at the highest level, so where the place where God lives, and the creative impulse comes down, then in the 10th sphere there is the first mover. So that means it's the first time that something comes out of the divine that has that's separated from the divine. Under this, we have the zodiac. So that's directly under the divine sphere. And so the zodiac is the 12-fold blueprint for everything that's going to manifest. And then under the zodiac sphere, we have a sphere of the fixed stars, in which things materialize and then they become visible. That's decisive for understanding the precession clearly, and also for understanding the whole of astrology, because this precession is a kind of mysterious movement, but you can understand it very well from this difference between the zodiac signs and the constellations. And so under the constellations, that is the sphere of the fixed stars, we have these 7 planetary spheres, which in a way are like orbits, but they are of course energy zones, but they do manifest in the orbits of the planets as we can observe them astronomically. And in the end, everything, all these energies, they end up on Earth and form this whole theater in which we live on Earth. So that's a very important picture, and especially for fixed stars, for understanding fixed stars and the precession, you have to focus on this difference between the sphere of the zodiac, which is the invisible blueprint, and then the stars, which for the first time we can see something. Well, that's a very decisive moment. And the interesting thing is that these stars, and that's the best view to understand precession, is that the fixed stars move within the zodiac cycle.
Yes. I guess the next question I would have for you is, what role do the fixed stars play in an individual chart?
This is hugely important. They have a very, very important role on many different levels. And they're not just an add-on. They give about, I would say, about 50% of the information you can find in a chart. So they're really part of the basic structure of the chart. Now, what do they show? If there is a planet or something like an angle conjunct a star, it means that the individual star and its mythological story is active in your life. And for a quick scan of your stars, you can limit to the luminaries, that is the sun and the moon, and the angles, and the Lord of the first house. Mostly of these 5 factors, there will be 2 or 3 on a star, and these stars are, with their mythology, are very important.
When reading, one of the things that struck me is how dramatic the stories are.
Yes.
And I mean, it is very alarming if, for instance, you discover that you are born with, let's say, the sun conjunct Algol. And, decapitation is not something that we seek. So perhaps you can explain a little bit to take out some of the alarm.
Of course, these descriptions tend to be rather dramatic indeed. Well, if we take Algol, which is the most malefic stars in the heavens, we can say it has its meaning and its story. And if you think of the chart of Donald Trump I discuss in the book, he has Algol on the MC, which actually shows how it can work. You can make other people lose their minds. So that makes someone very attractive, or gives someone a very glamorous atmosphere. So, would you say that this is malefic or negative? Well, certainly not for Donald Trump himself. So, I mean, this is rather subtle. The descriptions are indeed very dramatic and negative, and every star seems to be nasty. But there is a story connected to it, and this story can work out in so many ways that you really have to relativize these traditional descriptions and focus really on the story, the mythological story, and you can, as regards your personal, individual chart, you can choose the right part in the story you're involved in, and then it can work out much better than described in these rather simplified descriptions. So, let us take Algol again. That could be someone who knows what it is to lose your head and could work with psychiatric patients. It's about the role you choose, and actually that's the whole thing about this mythology, that it enables you on a very high level to choose the right role in one of your main stories. So this is not as dramatic as it seems, because this mythology, this mythological scenario, is one of the most important things in it.
I think really what we're saying, which is true for absolutely every aspect of astrology, is that mythology is by its nature dramatic, because we're dealing with archetypes. And it is for us to interpret the stories in the best way possible.
Yes.
And do that through our experience, through our understanding. And
Yes.
so, I liked when you were talking about, again, because we've started talking about alcohol, we might as well. When you were talking about the fact that it's also about what you lose your head over, not lose the challenge is to not lose your head.
Yes.
Over, say, materialism, because it seems to me, in fact, that the theme that runs through many of these, particularly the malefic ones, is that there is this theme of needing to remember that we are more than physical material beings.
Yes, absolutely.
There's a source and a soul, and that where we get lost is when we lose that connection to the soul, to the source, to divinity, whatever way we want to put it. And
yes.
And so that really, I think, runs right through the mythology of the fixed stars.
Absolutely, yes. This is exemplified very clearly in the myth of the bull. So you have this star Aldebaran, which is one of the most famous stars there is. This red star, and it's the eye of the bull. It's staring at Earth. So it's really focused and obsessed with material things. But in the mythology, this is the bull is Zeus, and he brings the soul back to the land of origin. So the whole bullfight is actually shows you what to do with this bull of matter. Yes, that's all these stories are variations and possible ways of reconnecting with the divine source. It's absolutely very well formulated. Yes.
I really liked that when I was reading it, because when we first start learning astrology, we learn how to use it in a very practical way. But if we continue to develop a deeper understanding of what lies behind astrology, what we have actually is a very ancient, esoteric, in the sense of a spiritual teaching, because even the zodiac itself, we start with Aries, we end in Pisces. And what is Pisces? It's about going back to the source again.
Yes, this is its famous chord between these two fishes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Therefore, it ends there. Yes.
Yes. And so there's always, even with the signs of duality, like Pisces and Gemini, there's the one who does well because they're looking beyond the material, and there's the one who falls from grace.
Yes, right.
They get lost in the material. So this is a theme that permeates the very essence of astrology. And that's why one of the things that I found most fascinating reading your stars, because that theme is so clear right the way through.
Yes, that's the essence of the myth, how to return to the divine source. This does not exclude the practical delineation of the stars, which have a lot to do with fame and very worldly things. But at the background, there's always this story, and it gives indications for you personally how to reconnect. And that's what astrology is about, as you say, because you can actually, with astrological knowledge, by way of astrological knowledge, you can look through time and see the source behind it. And that's what really the essence of astrology is about. That's the reason to practice it.
Indeed. And it's wonderful, because you can start off looking at it very practically. You can deepen it in a psychological sense, and use it for a better understanding of yourself and of others. But then you can also discover this connection to the spiritual side of astrology.
Yes, and specifically through the stars and mythology, your very personal story. This is your story. So mine's is one of my stories is the story of the eagle, and then okay, I'm in this story, and what should I do, and what should I watch out for? So this refers to the we didn't talk about it yet, the lunar mentions, which is about the lunar zodiac. There are actually in our Western system the 28 lunar mentions, and they got lost, which is a shame, because these mentions, they contain they're very much connected to the to mythology and the fixed stars too. So your personal individual mention, your lunar mention, shows you the central story in your life, and so it's like it's like you're a superstar. It's of course then where your moon is in, and I've been studying this Western mention system now, and my next book will be about it. And it's very much connected to the mythology, but this is your absolutely central story. So that's very interesting too. That it's possible to recover this old system and use it again.
Yeah. I think the thought that's going through my mind, and I hope that listeners will have this develop within them, is that every time I read a book on astrology, I find that I fall in love with astrology for the first time every time. It's this beautiful system of wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, which has so many different angles to discover and so much beauty, which is the very reason why I'm doing this podcast.
Yes.
To share that with everyone. I hope that in our conversation today, we have awakened some inspiration and curiosity for those who have yet to discover fixed stars. Oscar Hofman, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much. You're welcome.
And the book that we have been discussing, once again, is called Fixed Stars in the Chart by Oscar Hofman. And I will put a link to the book in the notes accompanying the podcast. Oscar, if people want to get a hold of you, I will also put a link to your website and your email address.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
And along with that, just a little note to say that also in the notes, there will be a link to the interview that I have just done with Oscar for my YouTube channel, Life Astrologer, in which we look at his chart and we learn all about it. So do make sure that you click on that link and enjoy that interview too. In the meantime, there is always the possibility of contacting me and learning more about astrology through the talks and workshops that I run. Next week, I am going to be talking about evolutionary astrology. So join us then. Goodbye.